everybody, and thanks for watching another episode of The Other 99. Today we take a look at a Thrun the Last Troll Voltron deck submitted by GhostAutonomy. Thrun is a deck that is simple but interesting to pilot. Thrun is hexproof and regenerate, which makes him a member of the very strange mono-green Voltron General Club. Thrun is a hefty body that comes down early and can't be countered. This deck plays a lot of expensive spells and needs a lot of mana for its equipment, so it needs quite a bit of ramp. Sacro Tribelder, Birds of Paradise, Llanowar Elves, Arbor Elf, Nature's Lore, and Rampant Growth. They all ramp you into turn 3 Thrun. Harrow, Kodama's Reach, Cultivate, Growth Spasm, and Skyshroud Claim. They ramp you into bigger spells. Caged Sun, Gauntlet of Power, and Vernal Bloom. These cards double your mana, which means this deck can play expensive cards like Eldrazi Conscription and Genesis Wave without mana being an issue. Gauntlet and Vernal Bloom help your opponents playing green, but that just means you have to be choosy about when you play them. The main part of this deck is to make Thrun big and terrifying, and then turn him sideways. Increasing Savagery. 4 mana for a permanent +5/+5 is great, but the fact that you can flash it back and put 10 +1/+1 counters on a creature earns this card a slot. 7 mana is nothing for green decks, and the deck can often cast and flash it back all in the same turn without worries. Rancor, a cheap way to give Thrun trample that recycles itself. Sword of War and Peace. Life gain is really relevant to this deck, because you will often be a huge target. Sword of Light and Shadow. The ability to return creatures from your graveyard back to your hand makes this a very good sword. Works well with Sacro Tribelder for almost unlimited ramp. Sword of Body and Mind. The mill is helpful against opponents without lots of graveyard recursion, and the wolf is a good body for chump blocking. Sword of Fire and Ice. One of the best swords for Thrun, green lacks good card draw, and Sword of Fire and Ice fixes that quite well. Getting to draw a card turn after turn can lead you to winning the game. The ability to ping 2 is also relevant, especially against decks that utilize a lot of small creatures. Sword of Feast and Famine. Being able to swing and untap all your lands is awesome, especially if you have a Caged Sun out. O Naginata. It has a limitation on what creatures it can equip, but considering that Thrun is a 4/4 without equipment, this is another cheap way to give Thrun trample. Sword of Vengeance. Turns Thrun into a chroma for 6 mana overall. Scrib Ranger. Allows you to untap Thrun and other creatures at instant speed, which means Thrun has pseudo-vigilance. Blanchwood Armor. It may be an aura, but the ability to give Thrun +1/+1 for each of your forests is crazy. Bladed Pinions. First Strike means that Thrun will almost definitely survive combat, and flying allows him to get past a lot of creatures. Eldrazi Conscription. +10/+10, Trample, and Annihilator 2. Thrun approves. Fire Shrieker. Double Strike. That means double the damage, and double the Sword of X and Y triggers. Bear Umbra. Works amazingly well with Thrun's Regenerate, because you'll always have mana up to regenerate with this card. Loxodon Warhammer. The only equipment that gives Thrun lifelink, with trample to sweeten the deal. Strata Scythe. Another Blanchwood armor that doesn't suffer from being an aura, and is even more amazing if there's another green player at the table. Vow of Wildness. Gives that all-important trample, as well as saving you from Thrun if someone manages to steal him. Green is very good at getting things back from the graveyard, no matter what the card type. Regrowth and Recollect. They are awesome recursion that get you anything you need. Eternal Witness. It's regrowth on a body, which is handy if you got a Sword of Light and Shadow. Noxious Revival and Reclaim. You put a card on top of your library, but at instant speed. Revive. It can't get back artifacts or lands, but can get back all of your awesome green stuff. Thrun is very powerful, but you might have opponents that are playing combo or control. Since these archetypes would give this deck trouble, Thrun's game plan involves using LD to keep problem opponents off colors they need. Acidic Slime. It shoots an artifact, enchantment, or land, and is an awesome body. Woodfall Primus. A big tramply dude that blows 2 things up. Moonvali Acid Moss. It sets someone back a land and puts yourself up 1. Bramble Crush and Creeping Mold. They are cheap sorcery land destruction with options. Desert Twister. 6 mana might be a bit steep, but Desert Twister lets you destroy any target permanent. Thermokarst. 1 slot LD for 3 mana. Rain of Thorns. For 6 mana, you can destroy up to 3 different permanents on the field. It's a really great card, especially for commander games with 3 or more players. Reap and Sow. A slightly more expensive Moonvali Acid Moss, but with the benefit of being able to tutor any land and have it come into play untapped. You can easily cast this, destroy land, and fetch up Strip Mine, and then destroy another land. Terracodon. Similar to Woodfall Primus, except it can blow up 3 permanents. Tsunami. Blue players with lots of counter magic can ruin Thrun's day, so this card keeps them from being a threat. Beast Within. The combination of being an instant and being able to target creatures makes this card an all-star in green removal. Strip Mine and Tectonic Edge. They are great land-based LD. Back to Nature. Gets rid of all those pesky enchantments, which is especially useful when playing against Bruna, Zur, or Uril. Naturalize and Wear Away. Having cheap artifact and enchantment removal helps ensure that your land destruction strategy won't be made pointless by mana rocks. Like any deck with green, the only thing besides lands this deck can find are creatures. But when you have cards like Terracodon and Woodfall Primus, you want to play them as often as possible. Primal Command. It can tutor up creatures, tuck non-creature permanents, gain life, or act as graveyard hate. Green Sun Zenith and Court of Calling. Grab creatures and put them straight into play. Worldly Tutor. It may not put creatures into play or have lots of options, but it is a very cheap way to find creatures, which is handy in the early game. This deck has its fair share of draw power. Triumph of Ferocity. This entire deck is dedicated to playing Thrun and making him huge and hard to kill, so you'll most likely have the biggest creature on the board, and if you do, you get a free card every turn. Harmonize. 3 cards for 4 mana at sorcery speed. Blue players might laugh at you, but in mono green, that's pure gold. Sylvan Library. Green Sensei's Divining Top, but if top allowed you to trade a chunk of life for cards in a pinch. If for some reason Thrun can't win you the game, then these 2 cards give you another option. Dungrove Elder. It can't regenerate itself, but it has hexproof and gets huge. A nice alternative for your equipment if Thrun isn't around. Genesis Wave. It plays very well with the mana doubling cards in the deck. If you can make X 8 or more, then you can cast any permanent cards you flip. This deck's simple mana base makes it relatively easy to assemble. Dryad Arbor, Maids of Ith, and 31 Forests. And now for the strengths and weaknesses of the deck. For its strengths. Like Thrun himself, the deck is highly resilient. This deck plays the best green has to offer in ramp, tutors, and removal. Even if land destruction is frowned upon in your play group, this deck balances land destruction well, giving you a fighting chance in multiplayer games. Thrun lets you play both defensively and offensively, depending on the board state. And for its weaknesses. This deck folds easily against any deck that can reliably cast Iona Shield of Emeria or any other similar effects. The deck is also weak against decks that have a lot of edict effects. Combo decks will often eat you up unless you're able to hold them off with land destruction or non-creature removal. While the deck doesn't rely on just Thrun to win, if you're unable to play him because of something like Nevermore or Meddling Mage, you're already at a huge disadvantage. You should play this deck if you enjoy playing green, you like to cast your general and keep him around, you want a fun interactive deck that is still competitive without being degenerate, you don't often play against 4 or more people, and you like playing Voltron-style decks. Thanks again for watching this episode of The Other 99. If you're looking to play a Voltron deck that also takes advantage of all the things that green can give you, then Thrun might be just what you're looking for. For next time, comment on YouTube, post on Facebook, or tweet us on Twitter to vote for either Niv Mizzet the Firemind, Teza Orzhov Scion, or Edric Spymaster of Trest. This is Carson with Top Go Productions, and as always, thanks for watching.